Welcome to Get the Scoop with Smirks podcast. I'm Nick Urker, president of Smirks, and here with me today is our Smirks executive vice president, business partner, and friend, Donnie Edson. Today we're going to talk about the history of Smirks and how we got here.
Good, Nick. It's nice to be here. I still wish I had my coffee. To get started, though, could you share about your family and how you guys got started in the food ingredient business?
Sure, yeah. It's a fun story. My father had a business here in Fort Morgan, Colorado, where you and I grew up together. And when we went off to college, graduated, said was never going to come back to work for my dad, was never going to move back home. And little do you know, after college, I needed a job and a place to live. So I ended up living with my father and started working with him. And at the time, he had Urker Grain Company. And Urker Grain Company was a processor of confectionery sunflower seeds. So we would sell the farmers the planting seeds, contract their production, buy it back, clean it, size it, and ship the products around the world. So with that, actually, as my father was visiting one of his sunflower customers in Malaysia, he found a product that they were making that really caught his eye and thought it'd be neat to do that back here in Colorado. So it was a chocolate candy-coated sunflower kernel, just like an M&M. And nobody in the United States was making anything like that at the time. So my dad came back to the United States, reached out to a customer or a vendor actually in Illinois, partnered with them. They started making the chocolate candy-coated sunflower kernels, and what became Smirks was born. It was actually in the beginning called Seed Stations. That's quite a mouthful, right? So Seed Stations was what it started out to be, and we were trying to do retail. So we had retail bags of the chocolate candy-coated sunflower kernels. We also did flavored pistachios. And then we started doing some of our own roasting right here in Fort Morgan. So we were doing cashews, sunflowers, and some pumpkin seeds. And we were packaging off a bunch of those things and doing retail and found that, while we were doing the retail stuff, we had a lot of bulk items. So we started looking for some bulk customers. And when I was in college, I actually started working with my father on the bulk side of things. And we picked up a regional grocery chain that we started supplying the bulk ingredients to. And fast forward a few years, and then you and I reconnected, and things just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I have some good memories of eating a lot of those chocolate-covered sunflower seeds in the beginning. It was a really cool item, and like an M&M, and we had an endless supply of them, knowing Nick's dad, so it was a great deal. And I actually spent some summers going around to the different gas stations trying to sell them to them, and even going to the Greeley Stampede, which is a gigantic rodeo here in Colorado, and we set up a booth and we were selling chocolate-covered sunflowers in 90-degree heat, which was never a great idea. But it was a lot of fun when you're in college to be out there doing that. So I think Nick and I even spent a summer working a potato chip route in Nebraska, delivering potato chips for a company, all with the purpose of trying to sell the packaged nuts and seeds into the gas stations while we were delivering the potato chips. So we've come a long way from back in the day when we were just traveling around all over eastern Colorado and western Nebraska trying to sell everything for $1.
Yeah, man,
where did Smirks come from, Nick?
Well, Smirks, that there's a, as I mentioned, it started out as Seed Stations, right? So the company was Seed Stations, and found that name was hard to say. It was really long. It wasn't really catchy. So my father at the time enlisted a marketing company's help out of Fort Collins, Colorado here. And the marketing company, we tasked them with helping us come up with a name. So they asked us if anybody had any nicknames. They kind of talked about the feel that we wanted the brand to have, like what we were shooting for, what we were trying to accomplish. And my father's nickname, all the way back from high school, is Smirk. So they incorporated my father's nickname into what became the name of our company today. And any of you guys that know my dad or have had the opportunity to meet my dad, he's kind of a fun-loving guy and always screwing around. So, Smirk fits him really well.
Yeah, it's a funny name how it came to be. And what's really cool is now what it's become. I don't think we could ever change our name because everybody knows what Smirks is, but they don't really know what Smirks is, I guess, too. So they know what we do, but they don't know where the name came from.
Yeah, and nothing has a name never has meaning until you give it meaning. So we've definitely taken that task on and given Smirks a meaning, and it's way more than we ever started with. From a packaged consumer good product to now the multitude of bulk ingredients that we bring in from around the globe. So Nick and Donnie, how we knew each other. So Donnie, I think you and I go back almost to diapers and pacifiers.
Definitely
We've
catechism, Catholic Church,
yeah,
early days.
yeah.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a long time. Had a lot of fun, done a lot of successful things, got in some trouble together. I think that's kind of the spirit that we brought into Smirks. When needed someone to come and help me, you were ready to move back to Morgan and get things started there. But going back to how we met, in school with catechism and then through high school, I actually Donnie was our center for the high school football team, and I was actually his backup. So we actually played football together and were involved in FFA together. Donnie had a chicken business. Your chicken business was something that kept us busy quite a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I started raising chickens. We started raising them for our family, and we'd raise like 50 chickens, and then we'd eat them throughout the year. And one summer, I decided to raise 150 chickens, and I sold 100 of them and made some money. So I invested all the money back into it. And the next year, I raised several hundred. And every year, I'd raise more until my senior year of high school. I raised a couple thousand chickens. So I was always persuading my friends to come hang out, and by hang out, I mean help me with my chicken business. We had some incidents. There was the great rainstorm. I can't remember what year it was, probably 1998, where it rained like 3 inches and my chickens were all floating away at 1 a.m. We had to go sandbag the chicken house. Nick and I actually, I traded 2 turkeys that I raised for a pop-up camper that Nick and I took a blowtorch to and created a chicken hauling trailer that we'd use to haul the chickens around inside of behind my GMC Jimmy. So that was another adventure we did. So, going through high school, Nick and I constantly were always coming up with ideas and business plans and things. Nick had a DJ business, so he was always doing that. I had my chicken business and lawn mowing business. And so we were always trying to find a way to make a dollar.
Yeah, and one of the things that has always impressed me about you, Donnie, is that not only trying to make a dollar for ourselves, but the fundraising. When we were in high school, that's one of the things I remember most about us working together was working together on the fundraising for the Cajun Boils, all the people that we'd raise money for. Our competitor in football there, that kid that broke his neck, and we raised a bunch of money for him during that time, and all the different causes that we've done together. That's one of my fondest memories, I guess, of high school, is us working together on the Cajun Boils, and even since then, you've still done some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, that was just something that evolved. So my brother worked at a factory here in town, and they would do these Cajun boils. They had a big boiler, so they'd put a pot of water on it. And throughout the shift, they throw in some potatoes and some sweet corn and some sausage and some crab legs and some shrimp. And then at the end of their shift, they would dump all the food out on a table and have a dinner with it. So we started doing that as a family on Easter, and it was kind of a tradition we did. So then we started doing it for our friends for parties or for birthdays or whatever it was. And as we were playing football growing up, then we started to do it as a team dinner once a week, where my mom would cook food and, feed 40 of us this Cajun boil. She even collected all of our old t-shirts so that you could just wipe your dirty hands on your shirt and keep eating, keep going. So, and it was, I think our junior year of high school, Nick and our high school had gone through a remodel project, and there was a lot of asbestos in it. They thought they'd gotten all the asbestos out, but they weren't quite sure. So we were going to school there, and they had asbestos monitors set up. And one day it caught a lot of asbestos, and they shut the school down in the middle of the school year. So we went several weeks without going to school. But Nick and I were class officers, and we were in charge of putting on the prom. And we had to find a place to rent to do it, and we didn't have any money. So we decided to have a Cajun boil to raise money. And that was the beginning of the Cajun boils. So we did them. We still do stuff today, but we started doing them in high school to raise money for different causes. And it started with our prom, and then it evolved into when that football player got hurt, and our team, instead of just sending him a card, we decided to raise some money, and we went and delivered the money to him, even though we never met him before. And that evolved into, we started a scholarship and gave out scholarships to our classmates, and it grew and grew and grew. And I think I was probably a junior in college when we broke the $100,000 mark that we'd raised off doing Cajun boils. And since then, it's gotten into these really big fundraisers that we still do to today. We did one not too long ago that we raised $90,000 for a family here in Fort Morgan. So that's still something that I hold near and dear to my heart is giving back to the community and trying to do fundraisers to help people out when they're in time of need. And it always is around food. However, we can cook a lot of food and get a lot of people there and then take all their money in an auction. That's what we do every time. So, yeah.
And I think the thing with food is really what kind of drew me into Smirks. When I was working with my father at Urker Grain Company, I really didn't like selling sunflower seeds. The sunflower seeds were really not my favorite thing to do. But the thing I loved was the sunflower kernels. And I actually got my father to open up the sunflower kernel line and continue expanding upon that. And the food side, where the sunflower kernels would go directly into human consumption, is really what got me more interested in Smirks and kind of brought that whole thing back together. The enjoyment that people get from food, and I think that the foods that we sell today bring a lot of enjoyment to people around the U.S. and other places. From the coconut sugar and different things that we sell. It's been wonderful to see how those things have evolved over the years.
Yeah, I would agree too. And with my background, after high school, I went and got a culinary arts degree and a business degree, and moved to California and started running restaurants out there. It's actually where I was when Nick and I talked. The only reason this happened to be is I had to go to Vegas for my dad's 60th birthday. I had to go to Vegas. We went to Vegas for my dad's 60th birthday, and I kind of thought to myself, if I'm going to do what Donnie does in Vegas, I'm going to probably go out a day early and do it, so I'm not doing it with my parents. And so I went out and had a little bit of fun and called Nick the next day to tell him the story about the fun that I got into the night before. And when I was talking to Nick, I was just deciding if I wanted to move back to Colorado from California to either open a restaurant or start a catering business. And I was telling Nick that. And it just so happened to be the day that Nick decided he was going to take over Smirks, but he needed somebody to run it. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come back and run Smirks?" And I remember specifically asking what you do. And the gist of what I understood was you try to sell stuff for more than you pay for it. And then you make a business out of it. And we still kind of use that as our principle now, although sometimes we sell stuff for less than we pay for it, but hopefully more often we sell it for more than we pay for it. And that's what led me back to Fort Morgan to work with Nick at Smirks. That was in March of 2010 that I started here. And, Nick and I both grew up in Fort Morgan. We had plans to move the business to Denver, and we kind of just evolved and kept it in Fort Morgan. And then we started families here, and we've never left Fort Morgan. And we never will leave Fort Morgan. Now it's part of us. So that's why the business is still here in Fort Morgan.
Yeah, and it's interesting how we repurpose things in Fort Morgan. We were looking for a place. Our first office, Donnie was in a server closet. So at Urker Grain Company, the first office Donnie ever had was just a server closet with the 4 servers in there, almost no air conditioning and a Rolodex. And he took that and ran with it. And we grew from there into a house. We had a house for an office, which I actually am living in that house right now. And then kind of moved out on our own for a little bit, moved in with one of my father's companies. And then 2017 bought the office where we're at today, which was an old liquor store. And we remodeled the old liquor store here. And then I've kind of outgrown that. And now we're working on Smirks 5.0, which is the former country club located at the Quail Dunes Golf Course here in Fort Morgan. So it's going to be kind of exciting. I don't know of another company that actually has an office on a golf course. You literally walk out and the 10th tee box is right outside our office. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So now we're never going to want to leave.
Yeah, and I always thought it'd be fun if I won lotto. I was going to buy that and turn it into an office and work with all my friends. So, I still haven't won lotto, but here I am. We bought it and we're making it into an office, and we're going to work with all of our friends inside of there. The good thing about that is my office is about 40 feet from the first tee and 40 feet from the driving range. It's also a 2-minute golf cart ride from my house to the office. So the commute's going to be very nice. Very nice. This is right down the 18th hole when I'm there. So, yeah.
Well, and we're going to be going eco-friendly, with that new Tesla roof generating power for us on the building. You're going to be able to plug in your golf cart and recharge it with the sun right there at the
Hmm.
office, and going green one step at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I'm really excited to move into the new office as well. So, some of my favorite memories, though, were in that server closet. I would say it was often 100 degrees inside of there, and I had one little tiny window that always seemed to face the sun, so it was always hot inside of there. But it was really interesting coming to work at Smirks as kind of employee number one for what we've become today. But coming from a restaurant where we had hundreds of seats and we were feeding sometimes 1,000 people a night to this industry was a lot different because there was a lot of downtime and I was so used to being busy. So I remember hoping the mail would show up so that I would, and hopefully there'd be a check in there so I could leave the office and go to the bank or something part of the day. Um, our technology wasn't really that great. We had QuickBooks, and you had to make sure everything was perfect inside of QuickBooks because when you sent an order, it took 5 minutes to upload it and send it. So if you made a mistake, then you had to go back and fix it again. So had a lot of downtime to just call people and get to know them in the industry. And a lot of the people we work with today are people that I just found on the internet or met somewhere, and I just called and BS'd with them for a while and started to forge these relationships that we have that we still work with a lot of these companies today that I met that first year when it was very slow and lonely.
Well, and that's one of the things I think makes us different, and one of the things I really enjoy about Smirks is how, you and I have built this off of our friendship, and we continue to build our business off of friendships, whether it be with vendors or customers. I don't think there's a single person where we have a transactional relationship. We really pride ourselves on getting to know our customers and getting to know our vendors and becoming friends with them. And one of the things that I've mentioned to a lot of people is that for us, your success, our vendors or our customers' success is of the utmost importance. We don't manufacture anything, we don't grow anything. We need to make sure that our vendors have the information that they need so they can make educated decisions on production side of things. And we need to make sure that our customers have all the information they need to know when to purchase things or what new ingredients to look at. So, just as we've built this business off of our friendship, I think we continue to do that with our vendors and customers on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree too. And it's interesting how we ended up in the portfolio of ingredients that we're in. A lot of it does stem back to the early days for the business that we had when we started out. So, my first day, Nick said, "Here's a Rolodex. Here's the important customers, and good luck." So I just started calling those people. And one of our main customers was actually in the United Kingdom, and we were shipping a millet that was processed in sterling, and we were exporting the millet to them. And as I got to talk to them and get to know them more, they started to ask me for other ingredients from the United States. And that's what led us into gluten free oats. So one time we were shipping almost a load a week of gluten free oats into the United Kingdom, and it was being private labeled for the gluten free sector inside the retail chains there. There was five main retailers, and we supplied them all with the gluten free oats through the brand that we sold to. And that was a long time before gluten free had picked up in America. They were years ahead of it in the UK when we did that. And so when the United States and the US North American market really started to ask for gluten free oats, we were really well established in it. And that's kind of what opened the door to a lot of the ingredients that we're in now is whether it was a granola brand or a cereal brand or whatever it was, they all use similar ingredient decks. So we'd start by selling them oats, and then we'd start finding other ingredients that we could sell to them, and a lot of them use the same ingredients. And even today, when you look at some of our core strengths when it comes to sunflower seeds, naturally, because it's what we grew up on, but with coconut, with other seeds like pumpkin seeds and chia seeds, a lot of that evolved from what started to complement the gluten-free oats we were selling to everybody in the United States, and it really grew from there. So it's interesting when you go back and you see where it all started from and how it's evolved into what it is. So
Perfect. Yeah, so Donnie, is we were talking about partnering with our vendors and customers on different things. One of the other things that I think gives us a really unique advantage in this industry is coming from the manufacturing side. Before we started importing and buying from manufacturers and selling to our customers and other manufacturers uh, through Urker Grain Company, we had a lot of experience with quality. We had to manufacture the stuff. We had specifications that we had to adhere to, and always constantly monitoring those things as it was going through production, tracking the lot codes, seeing the products all the way through. And as we got into Smirks, I think that one of the great things that we've done as a team is really invested in our quality department and given our quality department the autonomy to make decisions and review things and have items and documents on hand at a moment's notice. Our understanding from the production side of things with the constraints and challenges that manufacturers deal with on the production side, I think has really given us an advantage over some of our competitors in how we approach things with our vendors.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And it's been interesting that we've got to really live through probably one of the biggest transformations of food safety that's happened in the food world. When I started, people didn't even ask for a COA. And the first time, I think I was maybe 6 months on the job when somebody asked me for a COA, and I said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it's a certificate of analysis." And I said, "Oh, what are they analyzing?" They said, like salmonella. And I was like, "Well, salmonella, that sounds bad." And they said, "Yeah, that's why we need the COA." And so that's truly where it started at for me, and that was in 2010. To when FSMA happened and all the things that came along with that. I think being the generation that we are, we understood the technology side of it. We understood the food safety side of it. And I think most importantly, what the decisions we made as a company was the transparency side of it, where we're going to be 100% upfront with where our ingredients come from and why. When you look at ingredients, there can be, 100 different suppliers for an ingredient. And certainly the finished product might look alike when it's all done, but it's how it's made and the safety that goes along with it and who's better. And so we got to spend a lot of time from 2010 to 2019 traveling the world and looking at factories and realizing that there's really, really good factories. There's okay factories, and there's factories that you probably shouldn't buy from. Generally speaking, the ones that you shouldn't buy from are probably the ones that are the least expensive. And the ones that are really the best might charge a premium, but it really makes it so you can sleep at night because you're buying a good product that you can stand behind and that the factory will stand behind it as well. So now when you look at what our quality team goes through to analyze these companies, we just did a presentation for our whole company on, hey, here's the process if we choose a new ingredient. Here's every document we have to get, and here's what we have to analyze them for. Here's why we want to make sure there's an X-ray when you're looking at a sunflower seed. Here's why we want to make sure there's a kill step when you're talking about coconut. Here's why we want to make sure there's an allergen control when you're buying chia from South America, because they might be processing sesame, and sesame is an allergen as well in the United States. They may not tell you that unless you ask that, or you go through the documents and you actually break it all down. So I think that that's what our quality team does a really good job of, as well as our team that will travel to see these factories. If we want to buy from somebody and we're not sure, we'll just jump on a plane and we'll go see them. It's a lot easier to do that in the beginning than it is after the fact. So certainly it's not an easy industry when it comes to making sure stuff's perfect, because it's still an agricultural commodity that's grown in the ground, stored in a grain bin, harvested with a harvester, moved with a tractor and a truck. It's the same process no matter what you do, but it's whoever that last person is to touch it, you really want to make sure they have everything in place to be a really good company. And then our quality department does a really good job of making sure that everything's tested right and is consistent, so that we can give the documentation and the history and the story of the product to our customers so they feel safe with it as well.
Yeah, it's definitely come a long way. I remember when we started working together, you could sell, as long as you had something, you could sell it. Like we had mango one time. I remember that was like 3 years old, and somebody's like, "Yeah, you got mango? Sure, yeah." Well, nobody cared what the expiration date was. No. It was just like, okay. And now a lot of our customers say that they need 60-70% of the shelf life remaining when they receive the product. So that transformation has been huge, as you'd talked about.
Yeah, but again, I think being transparent with the customers and making these relationships and explaining it to them goes a long ways. You're being much more proactive than reactive in the beginning when you're setting this up for people on things. So when somebody does need 70% of the shelf life, it is possible as long as you put it together the right way from the beginning. So I think that's one of the important things that we do now. In addition to that, Nick, there's a lot of things you have to watch that happen that are out of everybody's control. So I think the importance of being a problem solver, or having a plan should a problem come up, with things that you might never think of, like a typhoon in the Philippines. And if you're only buying your coconut from the Luzon region in the Philippines, which has been hit with typhoons every 3 or 4 years that have been catastrophic, then what do you do once you run out of coconut and that factory shut down because of the typhoon, or all the coconuts are ruined because they blew off of the trees or whatever it is? So I think one of the things we've done over the years is try to set up different geographical locations to buy ingredients from when possible. Certainly there's some items that only come from some regions. But when you look at something like coconut, we started with the Philippines because that was where everybody wanted to buy coconut from. That was the main player. And it wasn't until, I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015, when that really nasty typhoon hit, that was the first time we onboarded Sri Lanka. And Nick and I flew to Sri Lanka and started looking at factories. And once we went to Sri Lanka and started looking at factories, we had a million questions too about how they were doing things there compared to the ones we'd been to in the Philippines, where it's very, very established. So that's when you find the good companies in Sri Lanka. And after Sri Lanka, then we went to Vietnam. We realized how good the factories were, a couple of them in Vietnam. Then we went to Indonesia. So now we have geographically, where, we have options all across the globe, which might not only fall into Mother Nature, but when you're coming off COVID, that helped us a lot, where maybe the Philippines were on a complete lockdown and Sri Lanka was on a complete lockdown, but Vietnam wasn't and Indonesia wasn't. Or after COVID, as we're going through right now, maybe when ocean freight rates are 10 times what they are in one country compared to another country, you can buy from that other country and pass the savings on to your customers as well, because you have the options and they're approved for everybody and you've done the work ahead of time. So I think that's one of the things really to think about is what's your backup plan? What are you going to do if a problem happens? What's going to happen with that? So, and now we've seen the industry shift too, where it used to be, we only want Philippines. To when we went through COVID, they said, look, if you can get it from Indonesia, we'll set up Indonesia. If you can set up Vietnam, we'll set up Vietnam. We just don't want to run out of product. And that was, I think, an important thing when we went through the madness of the last 3 years, that you did have options for different places to get things, and the customers didn't run out of product.
So for all those people out there that have always wondered how Smirks came about and where the name came from, I think Donnie and I have done our best to try to give you a little bit of history on the company today. So we appreciate you joining us on this episode of Get the Scoop with Smirks and learning about our origins.